With the promise of a shorter than usual garden season, we need to make every planting count. Tonight on Great Gardening, the plants and flowers that are your best bets in these conditions and almost certain to see vigorous growth in Northland gardens.
We celebrate each year as we receive it.
For good nutrition, we need a balance of colors.
I like to can because I'm a gardener.
We brought home an orchard for our community.
This was just an overgrown area full of bramble.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. I'm Pamela Fish and I welcome back our perennial experts, Tom Casper, the president of the Duluth Garden Flower Society, and Bob Olin, county educator and horticulturist. Okay, so we got another significant snowfall overnight, but if I know you guys, you will not be deterred.
Snow is a four-letter word, and we're not talking about it. Okay. I'm just kidding, just kidding.
We're eternal optimists.
Right.
And this one's going to be gone in a hurry, and then we're off to a good growing season.
Okay. And do you think it will be a shorter than usual season, or not necessarily?
I think it might be average.
Well, yeah, I think, we really did have a very, very cold spring. We're going to start off cool, obviously. There's
Sure.
a lot of snow, there's a lot of moisture content in the soil, but we're due for more of an average year and a very good year. So I'm optimistic.
All right. And of course, there are certain things that we almost always have good luck with, and we will talk about those coming up. But we also have our intrepid phone volunteers, the master gardeners from St. Louis County, here to staff our phones. And we introduce them with their shovel. Bob's got a shovel and a winter hat there to keep with the spirit of things. But please call in those questions you've been thinking about while you're waiting for the snow to melt. Call 218-788-2844 or the toll-free number on your screen, or you can also email us at askgardening@wdse.org.
We need to cheer them up a little bit, don't we? Come on, Master Gardeners, let's smile.
Yeah,
let's talk gardening.
They will. They're happy to be here.
There you
We're
go.
certainly happy to have them. We want to start this week, though, with some emailed questions that have been sitting in my mailbox for a bit, and then also some questions left over from last week. So we're going to do a quick round just to get warmed up. And the first one is from Jim in Duluth, who says, when is the best time to prune my apple tree? Is it getting too late for that?
Really right now, I mean, you're starting to, but if he can get out this weekend or early next week, but we're kind of getting towards the end of that season. I know it's crazy because we still got lots of snow,
Right.
but those trees are moving along, and seeing some pictures of pussy willows in bloom already and things like that. So get out, get that done. So
Okay.
This weekend is perfect.
It is. All right. Great. Let's see. This is about a jazz apple that Shirley from Fayette Township bought at the grocery store, found 2 seeds that had started to sprout, so she planted them, and now they're growing nicely. Will they be true jazz apple trees or something else?
They will be something else. But we're not sure what it'll be.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Honeycrisp apple turned out to be something else. This is an apple that's gone everywhere, but there was some stray pollen apparently that came in, and from those seeds they got something that was rather remarkable. So good or bad, it's going to be a little different, but go ahead and plant them and give it a try.
See what happens. All right. Jory from Solon Springs, this was another person who stopped by the home show booth, has a 3-year-old fig tree inside the house. It's getting big. What can I do with it?
really well leave it in the house,
Yeah, keep it
obviously.
going.
Okay.
It's not going to do well to put it outside, although she can put it out during our growing season, making sure it doesn't get frost. It's not hardy, obviously, for our region. She can do some pruning on it and keep it down to a specific size. They prune and respond very nicely to pruning. So nice clean cuts around it, keeping it to a size, and it should be fine for years. She sounds like she's doing well with it.
Okay. Mike from Hayward says some years my mountain laurel bush blooms pink, other years white. What might cause that?
In that particular situation, we'd like a little bit more detail,
Okay.
but sometimes changes in pH, changes in moisture levels, changes in other conditions can dictate that. Colors can fluctuate a little bit.
And the interesting thing is that he's growing a mountain laurel. Not a lot of people grow those. They're pretty hard to find really in our region. It's in the same family as rhododendrons and azaleas. Looks pretty similar to it, but generally not as hardy for our region. So.
All right. Well, he's in Hayward, so maybe That's the difference?
A little warmer.
A little bit? Okay. Karen in Duluth wants to know what type of foxglove grow best here and what are the requirements for those?
Well, there's the requirements are really they don't survive as perennials. They survive as biennials. So their first year they grow, second year they flower. So what she wants to do is you really have to allow them to do that. Oftentimes people will go in and they come from seed. So oftentimes people go in and clean out their plantings after they're done, and they're removing a lot of those seeds. So she'll want to allow those seeds to come first year growth, second year flowering. But there's a star series that does pretty well for
Star
us.
Series?
So that would be a good one, but she really wants to kind of cut back on any cultivating that she's doing around those foxglove.
All right. Well, we've got more here, but we're going to have to wait on that because we want to talk about our topic for tonight. And as we think about what grows best in this neck of the woods, we need to consider our zones. Now, here's a look again to refresh your memory of the zones in our region, and our area is pretty unique.
Yes, it is. You know, this is the new USDA map, and what's unique about it is we lost Zone 2 in Minnesota, which we had Zone 2, which is another 10 degrees colder in terms of absolute minimum winter temperatures. And this latest map has eliminated that from St. Louis County and points farther north. So that's one thing that's a little bit different. Obviously, the lake effect is very prominent here. I think the thing that people really have to bear in mind is this just deals with perennials, and these are just a compilation of absolute minimum temperatures. There are a lot of other factors that come into play in terms of whether or not a plant's going to be hardy in this particular area.
Okay.
But it certainly is a nice guide for us to follow as we're considering whether it is perennials and going to some of our local garden centers is really looking at where you live. Are you within a mile of a lake or a mile of the lake? You're probably a 4B, and then you get beyond that and start moving up and out of town and towards the range and things like that. So really kind of plan for this based on what you see. So
you can notice there the tip of in the Bayfield area. That
Yeah.
was Zone 5. A lot of people said that we were Zone 5. We are not Zone 5 in the Duluth area, and we have a little bit of zone envy when we take a look at what Bayfield has to
We've
work
seen
with.
some gorgeous gardens, things you
Yes.
can't grow around here in the Bayfield area. And we're going on another bus tour there. Just wanted to make a plug for that. But once we know which zone we're in, then it's time to choose your perennials. And Tom, you shared a list of your favorites, best bets for this area.
right, and certainly any of my lists that start out with best bet perennial starts with bee balm, one of my favorite plants. Talked about it quite a bit last weekend at the garden extravaganza that we were at in Hermantown. Great perennial, easy to take care of, very hardy, and of course peonies, and we see that up in the right corner. Outstanding colors. Daylilies in the left corner. Just outstanding opportunities for varied colors, and black-eyed Susans. And then if you're dealing a little bit with a shady location, Ligularia, lots of varieties of those coming on, and a great shade perennial that also attracts butterflies and bees to the garden. And the still bees down in the right corner is one of my
Those are nice
favorite.
in shade.
Yeah, do well in the shade. So there's some shade perennials, some sun
Right.
perennials. Perfect for any location.
Okay, thanks for that. Well, late last August at harvest time, we ventured into the cabbage patch for a lesson in cool season crops. Here's Bob with this week's tip.
So many of these crops are in the cabbage family. They were a mainstay of many people that originally homesteaded this part of northern Minnesota. We're beginning to see a resurgence in interest and popularity. I think it's because of the interest in better health. They're all very nutrient rich. Some of them have cancer preventative properties that have been documented. So there's a new and well-deserved interest in the cabbage families. Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts are beginning to gain really the notoriety and popularity they should have, because they're easy for us to grow, even a very cool year, extremely nutritious, and should be a part of everyone's diet. The last several years, where we've had warmer summers, they've produced, but they haven't had near the vigor. The yields have been down because they are cool season crops that really prefer a very cool, prolonged growing season with plenty of moisture. So in most areas, we've had the ideal conditions for growing the cabbage family or the cool season crops. This particular plot, we're trying to grow it very intensely. We're trying to optimize and maximize the yield. So they're a little tighter than what you might normally want. You have to manage your nutrition very carefully and select your varieties as well. And this is a variety that we've already harvested the what we call the terminal. That's going to be your main head. That's typically your very dominant head. But we've also got some very edible lateral shoots that are coming off here, so we want to try to get as much yield as we possibly can. And people should be aware that broccoli really is a floret. It's a flower head. You have a primary or terminal head, then you've got your secondaries, which is what we're harvesting here, and you can occasionally get a third tertiary crop, but those are going to be, again, much, much smaller. The flower heads, of course, are edible, and there's really nothing that's inedible about the plant. Even the leaves could be steamed and used.
That fresh broccoli looks good about now, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if we have another cool season, people should really focus on these crops. They did marvelously last year, and they may do well this year as well.
Some suggested varieties from you, and let's take a look
Certainly.
at those.
And that was a variety we showed people, Arcadia. It's noted for this large yield on the secondary and tertiary flower heads, so that's great. The cabbage family, these are varieties we've grown for years that really do well. Stonehead Ruby Perfection, a real nice red cabbage there that has some of the red anthocyanins. Again, it intensifies the nutritional value of these crops. Cauliflower, two very good varieties. Candy Sharp is going to give you a very large head. Let me just caution people, if you're putting in transplants, don't go too early on your cauliflower. That flower head can be damaged and never will set up properly. About the end of May. And then Brussels sprouts, which you can put in early because those flower heads are not going to set up until way in the year. So again, a little bit underutilized, but all of these are really very, very fine. Members of the cabbage family, all extremely nutritious and delicious. Very good.
All right,
You know,
great.
where are you going to find information like that?
Nowhere but here,
I mean,
I'll tell you that.
That's the beauty of this show. Isn't that great?
All right. Well, we're going to get back to some questions from area gardeners, and these are folks that we met while we were at the Arrowhead Home and Builders show earlier this month. Let's take a look.
I'm a beginning pumpkin gardener, so I think 3 summers now I've tried pumpkins, and last year all my leaves turned white and got really wilty, and I didn't have a really good harvest. Wondering if there's anything I can do to prevent that.
Real quickly, she has powdery mildew, which is a fungal disease that was actually more prevalent farther south. This last 2 years, we have very warm falls. We're seeing quite a bit of this. You can actually see powdery mildew resistant varieties in the catalogs, and we're going to have to look for more and more of those to try. Gold medal might be a good pumpkin for her that has quite a bit of a resistance to powdery mildew.
Okay, let's see what our next question is.
I have a flowering crab tree, and the leaves are getting spotted and turning black and falling off. I was wondering what could be wrong with that. Something I can buy or spray on it.
Well, there's something she can buy and spray on it.
Okay.
Apple scab is the problem, very, very common, or we're seeing more of it, similar to what Bob mentioned, and seeing a lot more of it in our environment. Look for resistant varieties of crab apples, trees that are resistant to apple scab. Look for that. She can also spray if she wants, needs to do it early. Good cleanup in the fall is also important, getting rid of those leaves and the foliage that has fallen. To remove as much of that fungus as she can, which overwinters in the soil or on the soil surface on the fallen litter. So,
Okay.
All great advice. Just one quick precaution. Edible apples and flowering crabs are a different group, and they have different materials, different fungicides that you'd be using. So read that label.
yep.
All right, one more question from our home show visitors.
A couple years ago, we had a problem where maybe about a third of our crop came with black hearts in it. The plants were healthy. We didn't have potato beetle. We just compost for fertilizer, and good aged compost, tilled in very well. And the potatoes look perfect and wonderful, large, beautiful potatoes. And they stored well, and then when we cut them open, they had a big black hollow heart in them, and we were disappointed to have them like that. So we're just wondering, what can we do to not have hollow heart potatoes?
You know, that's really a good question.
Yeah,
That's
unpleasant surprise.
That's not uncommon. I imagine how disappointed she was when she cut into some of them. That hollow heart is really a response to real rapid growth. They've done everything right. As she mentioned, there's a lot of fertility in the soil. Might be a little bit short on potassium, so soil test there and make sure you've got enough potassium there. Last year we had all this moisture in the early part of the year. It was ideal growing conditions. Those potatoes just grow so fast, and the tuber really didn't catch up and fill in properly. So it's kind of a function of the season. Some varieties are more susceptible than others, but the one thing she could do, don't overwater, don't fertilize at all, and then make sure that you got enough potassium there. And then the rest depends on the weather.
All right. Some more questions. One from Betsy in Iron River, who is replacing a damaged deck around the house. And there are iris, peony, daylily, azalea, a lot of things you see around your house. But she's afraid that in the process here, they're going to get trampled. So can she move them out this spring and then replace them later, even though some of them you don't move in the spring, right?
Right. Well, the ideal times for some of those that you mentioned is actually the fall, iris and peonies. But you can move them anytime you want, as long as she protects them, keeps them out of the direct sun while the deck is being built, put them in containers, keep them watered, and they'll be just fine, and then plant them after the deck is completed. But very good that she wants to do that in advance of the deck construction because they are easily damaged. So.
Okay. Linda from Hermantown wants to know if there's an organic way to get rid of large patches of tansy. She did try pulling them out and covering them, a little wary of Roundup, but if she does use the Roundup, how long before she can replant with something like milkweed?
Lots of good questions there. Okay, let's eliminate the use of Roundup initially.
Okay.
Let's come in, let's cut them back, and let's cover with 2 heavy layers of black poly. She's going to have to go the whole season, and you can't let any of that resprouting occur. 1 or 2 green leaves, and it replenishes the root. If she's not successful at that point, then a fall application of Roundup, she might have to fall back on that. Roundup's going to be very effective on this plant, on the regrowth, the young tissue in the fall of the year. And that combination, 1 application, and that will eliminate the tansy.
Okay, great. When and how do I divide and replant a 13-year-old clematis? That's from Diane and Proctor.
Best to do it in the spring before it is really leafed out, so probably in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, Diane, if our schedule or if our season kind of comes around, but probably a couple of weeks from now, go in, take out the entire plant, clean it off, get some of the roots cleaned off, and then she can go in and actually physically break off pieces of it, and it should divide just fine. So.
Okay, one from that was emailed, Carol from Duluth, has some 3-potted roses kept cool in the garage, covered with plastic, watered. They're starting to green up, but now she's got an issue with some mold on the soil, on the rose stem near the soil.
Oh, okay. Well, what's on the soil she doesn't have to worry about, really.
Okay.
Just scrape it off. The fact that it's moving onto the stems. I'm concerned about the poly she has on top.
Oh.
At this point, we're holding a lot of moisture, a lot of high relative humidity in there, so let's certainly get that poly off there. Time to give them some air, time to give them some sunlight, even if it isn't quite ready to move out. But temperatures above freezing, let's get them out of the garage and expose to some good air and warmer conditions.
Okay. Another Carol from Duluth has a large clump of bleeding heart covered in snow. Can I divide it as soon as the snow's gone, or should I wait until later?
We're going to say this a lot today, another good, timely, pertinent question.
Yeah.
Bleeding heart should be divided in the spring before they start to grow. So she's really right on top of it. As soon as that snow goes away and the soil is workable, get in, cut that bleeding heart into chunks. Very, very responsive to dividing, easy to do, and will do quite well for her.
Okay. Let's take one more before we move on, and this is from Arnie, and I think it's a Wisconsin number. How do I keep cats out of my garden?
Oh, okay.
Get a dog.
Foxes.
Oh, a fox?
Ooh.
Well, Tom, there are some organic materials
Yes,
that deter them a bit.
Yep.
Yeah, some of the pepper-containing compounds in particular, I think, have been fairly effective, but repeated applications, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you really want to get the hot pepper mixes that you can buy. Yep, you want to go in and spray the soil, because what happens is they get that on their paws, and then as they're cleaning, they're exposed to that hot pepper, which is discomforting for them, doesn't hurt them or kill them or anything like that. But some of the hot pepper sprays work pretty well.
Okay.
We're animal lovers. We love cats, we love deer, but in their place, right?
That's right.
That's right.
The cat in the garden leaves things that none of us.
Well, and that is a very good point. Obviously, some of the fecal material from cats can carry pathogens. You do not want cats in your garden. You don't want them in your compost pile. So it's a very good point.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to have to save the rest of the questions for a little bit later. For this week's tour, though, we take you to Northwest Wisconsin, where gardens encircle and most certainly enhance a lovely and well-loved log home.
My name is Cindy Humphrey, and this is Lakeside, Wisconsin, just a few miles north of Poplar, Wisconsin, on the Middle River, and welcome to my garden. That's the perennial geranium. And there's a barberry that we had one out front that sometimes you just start up new little ones that shoot up after it, so I moved that over there, and it's probably just a little bit past peak for its bloom. Oh, that's the tiger eye sumac, and it won't get real, I don't think, too much bigger, and I like the color contrast. I think it's a nice combination. We just started out with one pig that we found at a garden center where it was under a shelf and it had moss on it. And I was like, well, that's kind of cute. And my husband's always liked pigs. He used to work on a farm when he was in high school for a little bit. And so we bought that pig, and then it just got to be where when we travel, we stop in garden centers or different places and we see a pig that we like and we buy it. So now there's about 20, I think. And we've got Arby's grandmother's rhubarb that we've moved every time we moved into a house, we take some with us and then we divide it out and give some to other people. There was an elderly lady in Superior, and one time I drove by and she was out there, so I stopped and I said, do you mind if I look at your gardens? And she gave me that, and she gave me the primroses, and it is fun. And it's fun to share. When I used to work at the mill, I'd bring plants in a lot of times because things need to be thinned out or whatever, and people always were happy to take things and put in their gardens, and hopefully they maybe think of me once in a while when they see them. Hill down into the Middle River. Could really use a good thinning out so you can see it a little better, because 3 seasons out of the year you see the river really well, but in the middle of summer you don't see it a lot, you just hear it. I do spray my things with plant skid, and it keeps the deer away. When they're just starting to kind of open but not all the way out, that's usually when I spray. Some of mine got a little splatter because it's pig's blood, that's what it is, and it's really gross. Most of the time it totally disappears, but there was a few that for whatever reason just kind of stained my plants this year. So, but I swear by it. It works really well for me, and I only spray once, so it's not like you get a big rain and you have to go back out and do it again. Well, this is, I guess, the sunniest garden that I think I have. This is the first one we actually started, and then the honeysuckle and Nishiki willow, and then that's the Nishiki willow tree, and then some more geranium, perennial geranium, and a cut leaf spirea, the pink, dark pink down there. We had the 2 flowering crabs there, and then I put a few hostas around, and then everything just kind of started small and then just keeps expanding. I really like to combine the hostas, like a silvery gray one with like a bright chartreuse one, or you can really make a difference. Every year I just keep on adding a little bit more here and there, and now the whole thing is finally done, and now that I don't work, it's like I can spend all the time in the world out here. I've been really fortunate.
Isn't that nice?
Everybody take
Boy,
a deep
I'll
breath.
tell
It's coming.
Did you notice that color? Green.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, we were at Cindy's garden for our tour and then got to go back when things were blooming even more. It's a beautiful place out there.
Just a beautiful place.
On the Middle River. Okay.
Thanks to her and Arby.
Yes, and Arby, yes, thanks much. More now on the plants that you're most likely to find your greatest success with. And these, Bob, are some of the fruits that you have seen do pretty well.
Well, these are surefire, yeah. There's a lot of exotics coming in, peaches and apricots and other things that we're not sure about, but these we know do well. Black currants, Titania, I think is a variety you want to look at because we don't have the problem with a co-host for the white pine blister rust with that particular variety. Raspberries, encouraging small plots because our larger producers are experiencing a problem with the Drosophila fly, and there may not be much large-scale raspberry production around. So the small plots are going to do better. Boyne and Killarney, two Nova Scotia introductions, both of which have done very well. And then, of course, the blueberries, the Minnesota half-highs, Dr. Wildung's introduction. North Blue and Chippewa are the two highest producers. North Sky is this little smaller plant, but it has a fruit that's closer to the wild berries, and it's actually become an extremely popular landscape plant because of the fruit and the fall color.
Okay, great suggestions. Thanks, Bob. I want to tell everybody, too, you will find these lists on our website, if not tomorrow, then the day after. But some gardeners discover their love of the pastime later in life. Here's a prime example in tonight's Grow and Show. When Duluth's Patty Stromgren decided to start gardening 3 years ago, she began with a vengeance and hasn't looked back. This formerly barren lot was quickly transformed. With a fast-growing katsura tree surrounded by pink bee balm and coneflowers, roses, sedum, phlox, yarrow, and more. Patty's rudbeckia grew so fast and furious she nearly pulled it up after someone told her she had an invasive weed. But several days later, the lemon yellow blooms reminded her of what she'd planted that fall. They've become some of her favorite flowers. A recent retiree, Patty planned for her fairy gardens over the winter. Each season as new plants and blossoms enliven the landscape, Patty says her goal is to see the entire yard become lawn-free. If you have favorite yard and garden photos to share, email them to greatgardening@wdse.org or mail to 632 Niagara Court, Duluth, Minnesota, 55811. That's beautiful. And darn, we still have a pile of questions, but not much time. Okay, just pick one real quick, Bob. Okay, here it is. Jill from Duluth has pots with soil left outside over winter that have bugs in the soil. Can I reuse that soil, or how do I kill the bugs?
Well, I wouldn't want to fool with the bugs. I'd take them all and I'd compost it all and maybe mix it in next year, but throw that out, start fresh.
All right. Well, we do want to remind you to check for new calendar items on our program page. Especially we want to mention, Tom, that the plant sale at the Leif Erikson Rose Garden is a week later than usual this year.
Yeah, we're like a lot of things delaying it a little bit because of our what looks like our late start to the season.
But you'll find more information on our website and also find out about our bus tours. But that's going to do it. That's our show this week, and we want to thank Bob and Tom for all the expert advice and suggestions. A big thank you to our phone volunteers, and of course to all of you who called in questions. From all of us here at Great Gardening, thanks for watching. Good night.